Hello there, Reverb Nation. We are live. It is our weekly music career study group. It's our chance to hang out together, catch up on important news, dive into deeper topics that impact you, the career minded, independent artist. It's a place where we can get together, exchange notes, and learn from one another. So we want your participation. My name is Kevin. Joining me is Chris.
Hey,
And
how's it going?
we are here to guide the study group. And if you are joining us, we want you to let us know in the comments where you're watching from and maybe anything that's top of mind for you. Like, hey, I saw this news story and what do you guys think about it? Should we be worried? Should we pay attention to this? Is this important? Is it not? There's lots of interesting things happening in the news. And Chris, we'll get into that in a minute, but how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I did want to say, you asked for people to say where they're watching from, maybe also share what kind of music you make, what your projects are that you're working on now. But pertinent to the topic today we're going to focus on is, what's your take on AI in music? Like, are you hopeful? Are you just, in the corner shaking with dread? Have you used certain AI tools that have either been helpful or disappointing? Whatever you want to say about AI, this is a safe space.
Yeah, and I think this is a great topic for the study group because it's something that's new. We started 2024 and everything was AI. The world was AI. Every business was saying they were suddenly AI when they really weren't. Um, and there was artists that were concerned. There's artists that were confused. There's artists that are like, this is the best thing ever. And so this is one of those things where it's a great topic for us to just share, like, what has our experience been?
Yeah.
Is it useful? How have you found it to help simplify your life? How have you found it to be a nuisance or confusing or concerning for the state of music? There's some big storylines. One that just dropped yesterday about AI in music.
I won't say that story was well timed because it's a lot of drama, but like you're saying, like for about a year and a half, I felt like all we heard about was AI. And then there did seem to be a bit of a lull, or like maybe that's not the right term, but like the heat of the story had kind of died down a bit. And I felt like musicians have kind of adjusted to this, whatever new normal is. And then this story dropped. So interesting times.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a second. But there are people watching, but no one's weighed in on where they're watching from, who they are. Drop a link to your music, say hello. This is a study group. This is class participation. We want
Yeah.
to hear from you. We want to exchange ideas. Yeah, sure, you can just hang out and watch Chris and I, shoot the breeze about AI and music, but we want participation. We want to involve you. So feel free to say hi and weigh in on the comments. Let's while people do that,
Yeah.
let's should we jump into a few of the trending stories that have been happening? Some related to AI. There's a couple others that I was going to mention that are interesting of
Yeah.
note. First up, the big one that related to AI. Uh, we've told people for years. Chris and I have worked in distribution for many, many years. Don't do this, even with your original music. But a big case just came against a person who was creating thousands and thousands and thousands of tracks through AI and driving fake streams to them to the amount of $10 million.
Yep.
And they're going to go to jail for a long time. Don't do that.
Well,
That's wrong.
if found guilty, I guess
Yes,
we
if
should say,
found
right?
guilty, it's probably safe to say that that's going to happen. But one thing that's interesting, we don't need to get into all the drama because I think there's several layers that have been uncovered that could make this high drama. But the thing is, first off, don't do this. Don't drive fake streams towards your music. There's also a lot of artists that are frustrated because they found themselves to be collateral damage of these types of schemes, where people are creating playlists of fake tracks plus real artists, and the real artists are none the wiser and get penalized. But I think it's interesting, and then it impacts, like, there's a lot of discussion about these AI music platforms and the legalities where they train their algorithms from, and all that. So it's going to be a big story. If you're interested in reading about what we're talking about, that you can, I'll drop a link to the Digital Music News article
Well,
in
one
the
thing I was going to
comments.
say without trying to point fingers necessarily is that in a lot of these stories, when people get caught for bot streaming or these sort of vast AI catalogs with fraudulent listening activity, I'm always left thinking like, hey, isn't one of the things that tipped off whoever the authorities to this the user behavior? And I don't mean the musician; I mean the either real or the questionable real behavior of a user or the fraudulent behavior. So why is it always the artist getting punished? I mean, this case is maybe a bad example of that, but in those cases where you mentioned artists are getting removed, I was like, wait, why is the artist getting punished for essentially what is user activity?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Anyways,
think
just a
that's,
question.
yeah, that's something that it's, I think it's, this case is gonna, I think, have a lot of implications across the whole industry. So I dropped the link there. Check it out. It's gonna be big news for a while. Again, there's people watching, a decent amount of people watching, and you've yet to weigh in and tell us where you're watching from, who you are. Drop a link to your music. If you've got comments or questions about AI and music, we want to hear from you.
You
And
also you sent me a link to a story recently. I didn't have a chance to read it yet, but what's the deal with this Portland venue that is stirring up some controversy?
yeah, it's made national news in the music industry here in the United States and Oregon. It's a town known for trying to go its own way.
Keep Portland weird is it's one of its slogans.
And Live Nation has done all the work to start building a new venue here in the Portland area, and it's received much controversy. And so there's Music Portland and some other organizations are trying to stop that from happening. I think it's a very there's arguments on both sides. Portland does need a 3,500 seat venue. If you're not familiar with geography and U.S. cities, Portland is one of the largest cities that doesn't have a lot of things that main big cities in America do. I think it's like the 27th largest city in America. But if you look at comparable cities of the same size, they have multiple professional sports teams where Portland only has a basketball team. They have multiple venues. They have a stadium. Portland does not really, well, now it does have an outdoor stadium that Live Nation just did the improvements on to have concerts. The Foo Fighters just played recently. So it's one of those areas that bigger cities that get skipped a lot of times in tours because we don't have a 3,500 seat venue. That's what Live Nation wants to do. Lots of concern about that. But in general, there's been many storylines about Live Nation, Ticketmaster, ticketing. It seems like it's feast or famine out there for a lot of artists. There's major tours that are thriving like crazy. I just saw something about Coldplay yesterday. Their tour grossing over $1 billion. It was the first tour to gross $1 billion. Not to be confused with Taylor Swift being the first artist to hit the billionaire mark. I don't think her tour has grossed that. I wouldn't be surprised when it's all said and done if it does, if it hits that mark. But lots of talk about ticketing and live music, and it feels like post-pandemic that market just feels weird. And I'm curious what artists who are watching have experienced, if their local scene, if it's like, hey, yeah, the clubs are thriving, the gigs are going well, or it feels like, man, it still feels like it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, well, it seems to be somewhat mirroring a lot of stratifications that have been happening where like the absolute megastars are doing better than ever. And some even middle tier kind of notable acts like the Black Keys, I know, had to cancel a string of venues because maybe they weren't selling tickets like they wanted. So they had to book a sort of a, what do they do? They scrambled to book smaller venues, I think.
Yep,
But
yep.
that's a story that seems to be happening for the sort of middle tier and down, is that the challenges are mounting for launching sustainable tours. And yet the megastars are doing better than ever. So
Yeah,
interesting.
and I'd love to do a deep dive into live music strategy for the independent artist at some point on a future edition of the Music Careers Study Group, because it's interesting what's happening. Like, I think on the last edition, I made a crack about like Bon Jovi saying in the 80s they were getting paid $100 to open for bands when they were first starting out. I'm like, it's 2024 and bands are still getting paid $100.
Yep.
That does not work. I mean, if you adjust for inflation, that should be like at least $250, $300,
Yeah.
maybe more, but it's a weird market. Ticket prices are astronomical and certain tours are thriving. But yeah, so there's been a lot of news. And the one that article that popped up today was Chapel Roan canceled tickets for the Tennessee concert due to scalping. That's been another big thing, like another big storyline with the Oasis announcement of their tour that got mentioned. So lots of interesting things and happening in the music industry that impact artists of all levels.
Yeah. Hey, while we're waiting for people to weigh in and say, hey, I thought I'd do a little Reverb Nation feature spotlight for a second, which if you are a member of Reverb Nation, you can use this tool called Promote It. If you don't know what that is, it gives you a really easy and affordable way to advertise your music on major music sites like the ones listed here: Pitchfork, Rolling Stone, NME, MTV, Paste, many, many more. It's really easy to use. Basically, you put in a song that you want to feature or a video. The ad basically builds itself. You have the ability to customize how it looks and stuff, but we do all the targeting for you. It's great. I used it a couple weeks ago and got upwards of 2,000. I think it was 2,300 by the end of the week, 2,300 new listeners for one of my songs in less than a week. So, and I should also say I spent $49 was the weekly budget. So for less than $50, more than 2,000 listeners in a week. I was pleasantly surprised. So if you would like to use this tool, use the coupon code PROMOTE10 and you'll get $10 off your campaign as long as you spend at least $21 on the advertising campaign.
Yeah, it's a really great tool, easy to use. And as I've said before, I've tried pretty much every market advertising platform that's marketed towards artists out there that I've seen. Whenever I find a new one, I try it. And this one by far gets some of the best results and is very easy to use and very dialed in. So check it out. Again, head on over to reverbnation.com and you can create an account for free. So you don't have to be a paid member of Reverb Nation in order to use that tool. You can create an account and then use it. But part of the magic secret sauce of it is that it uses your Reverb Nation profile to create these playable ads that just work really great. They look awesome and they work great. All right. A reminder, Chris, everyone must be feeling shy today. It's, a lot of people, it was the first week back at school. They're just like, it's Thursday. I'm just going to kick back. You guys talk. I'm going to listen. But if you're joining us, it's a study group. We want to hear from you. Weigh in. Let us know where you're watching from. Drop a link to your music in the comments and say hi. Yeah. And as we're talking, if you got a question or comment, feel free to weigh in. This is interactive. This is happening live. You are not watching a pre-recorded video. This is live.
They're like, yeah, we know it's live. It's 13 minutes in and you haven't even talked about AI yet.
We mentioned it a few times. Well, let's dive in.
So we should talk about AI.
Yeah. Lead us off, Chris. Where we?
Well, I know we're getting into it. I know we want to talk about some specifics regarding tools and whether they work, how they work, whether they don't work. But I had like a very general thing to say, which is that a lot of the, I don't know if it's negativity, the suspicion, I would say, around AI in music that I notice comes from this attitude that there's pure music, purely human or purely artistic music, and then there's AI or heavily tech influenced music. And so I just thought it'd be interesting to start with the point that there is no pure music. Since the dawn of time, technology has been intertwined with how we make sound. And so whether that's like banging some seashells or some stones together, or, carving a stick out so it becomes a flute or whatever it is, that is all technology on up through the invention of stringed instruments and, whatever, pianos, recorded music, guitars, synthesize, all of it is part of this long evolution and this long journey of tech being absolutely interwoven with music. And yet I think we look back on, let's say things that came anywhere up to 10 or 20 years ago as the purer music, because we've kind of had time to fully integrate the effects of that technology into what we perceive as pure music and how we receive it. So I don't know if you have anything to say to that, but there's no pure music, people, or I should say maybe all music is pure.
Well, it is interesting because the state of where we're at with music, and especially most music being created, what they say would call inside the box, meaning inside the computer, not even when people are mixing, a lot of the stuff that's happening is all plugins that are software plugins, a lot of software synthesizers, things that aren't, hardware or music or instruments that live in the real world. And I was just watching a a clip on Instagram from the producer who produced 21 Pilots' latest album. I think he's worked on a lot of their music. And I was kind of surprised at how much they were just composing inside the box is, how they would call it, but like just using very standard plugins to create these sounds. A lot of people that would say I'm a purist would be like, well, I go to a studio and we have outboard gear and we mix like you're supposed to. I'm like, at the end of the day, what does it matter as long as it sounds good? But my point being is that a lot of these plugins and things are incorporating what they would say is AI. And it's sort of just become this thing that's to some degree running in the background that we really don't even know half the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I just say on the technology thing is like, I think you made the point when we were discussing this earlier that for much of history, that pace was slow. It may be hundreds of years between the development or improvement of new instruments. Then, so much of probably the Middle Ages was focused on the space, making technology about the acoustics and stuff. And then really over the past 100 years, it's accelerated to this point where I think we start to fear that the machine out there is doing the work for us because the pace of evolution is sped up. So I don't know if that interrelates with what you're saying about basically pushing a button and a preset and something's delivered to you.
Yeah, I think that's partly where I think for some artists, the frustration is, hey, this used to take a lot of time, effort of developing my craft, maybe experimenting, having some success, having some failure. And now anybody who, can just show up and push a button and skip a whole lot of steps.
Mm-hmm. Hey, they didn't have to pay their dues.
That's why if, I before like this disaster that's happening in the live space where it seems like, venues are still struggling post-pandemic. Some tours are thriving, some are not. Some artists maybe not feeling the need to tour or want to tour. I was feeling like when AI was becoming the conversation, it's like, well, AI can't go perform live for you to some degree. And maybe the live experience becomes the thing that the real musicians do. Like real musicians go out and perform and put on an amazing show that drives their creativity, their business. And recorded music, which has had challenges just in the streaming space, maybe that becomes more of an afterthought, or it's a piece of the experience, but not the main experience, where right now it's recorded music is the main experience.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe with the AI trend, that flips back the other way. Who knows?
Yeah. So Carlton Wheeler is weighing in saying, the artist that can adapt to change is hard to find. We have to not get used to repetition and stay creating new ideas that turns into the new thing. So I do, that's a great point. And there's ways in which I think AI might present solutions to that and challenges. The solution may be that you as an individual creator can now lean on certain tools that help inspire you, that maybe make up for some of your own musical or marketing deficiencies, so that like you can be a better version of yourself. You can go in new directions that maybe AI is prompting you to explore. Not in like a you're forced to do it, but you have options that are being delivered. You can kind of curate your way towards a better, truer expression of your art. The opposite standpoint of that is I hear a lot of concern about algorithms. Forget about AI, but the whole thing being this sort of self-reinforcing mechanism where trends that get the most popularity tend to get more dominance in how they're served, and then like something like the just absolute dominance of like 4/4 time signatures, let's say, which is very preeminent in Western music, gets built into drum machine programming and AI music generation, all this stuff, because it's so predominant. And now suddenly the cultures where perhaps those rhythms aren't their thing, they have other things, are less able to make use of these tools, which further diminishes their input. So I guess that's to say one of the worries is that unchecked AI can kind of stamp out more niche musical
Yeah.
expressions, cultures.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. And I think part of it is also the mystery of what these tools are training themselves on.
Yeah.
You mentioned algorithms. I mean, that basically creates the algorithm, but we have no idea what they're training it on. So is it building off of a robust uh, you know, uh group of music, or is it just like, we just got the hits and trained our algorithms off and our AI off of that? And you're like,
Mhm.
I want it to be, I want these tools to expand creativity, not limit
Yeah. You said it a lot quicker than I did.
it. uh, let's see what do we have up next?
Well, I kind of mentioned AI, one of its purposes being able to make up for human deficiencies. So one of the things is, as a musician today, if you're going to be successful in your career, you got to wear a lot of hats. You're going to have to be a creator, sometimes a recording engineer, a marketer, a copywriter, a videographer, a social media personality, on and on and on. It's a lot. And so to the degree that AI tools can not just be helpful in making the music, but also in marketing automation, copywriting, video editing, even something like strategizing. Like I know you and I both turn to Chat GPT and other kind of large language stuff to put in our ideas and then say like, what's missing here, like what are we not seeing about this strategy. And then a lot of times it does return information that maybe we took for granted, but we think, oh, that actually is more important, or things we didn't even think of. So um anyways, some of the other uses, not just video editing, but also video and photo creation. There's Canva, Photoshop, Dolly, Midjourney, a bunch of those things. ChatGPT can be great for simple education. And then, of course, for music production, there are so many amazing tools, particularly BandLab has things like noise removal, background noise removal, voice to MIDI. So you can like sing into your phone, press a button, have that melody transformed into MIDI, and then just toggle through presets. Be like, let's turn it into an orchestra. Let's turn it into a saxophone. Like those things they blow my mind. And if you told me as a kid something like that would exist, I'd say, yeah, in 300 years. But no, it's here. And those things are
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. And I think that highlights some of the tension. Uh, we work for BandLab Technology, so Reverb Nation's sister company is BandLab. And that is a thing. Voice, you can sing into your phone, turn that melody into a MIDI file, like MIDI notes instantly, and assign it to a keyboard. And it is amazing. And I think that's where some of the tension in the music community comes, is that a purist might say, well, you're not a real songwriter. You're not you didn't really come by that honestly. The machine did it for you. And it's like, well, I think at the start of the creative process, a lot of us have ideas in our head. And the frustration can be, I've got this great idea, but I don't know how to actualize it. And so those AI tools I appreciate, because that's helping artists make that creative vision come to life. And to me, at the end of the day, that's what's most important. it's not whether or not I'm the best piano player, but if I have this piano part in my brain and I'm like, I'm frustrated because I just can't get it out. I love that AI can help that happen.
Your
And
critique too,
yeah,
I know you were putting on a voice for that critique and it wasn't yours, but it strikes me as like, I don't know, a composer who notates their score and then someone gets a 4-track recorder and like puts down 4 different guitar parts to build a song or a composition that they might not know the notes or the chords or anything, but they're building a piece. And then the composer's like, that's not real music because you don't know what chords are notate. Like, who cares? It's music. So
yeah, yeah. I was talking to friend of mine, Malia. She must not be on the study group today. She has.
if so, she's very quiet.
Well, she's a professor, and so she has office hours going on right now. But um, I was talking to her about it, and she's a PhD music theory person, and so very much there's this. I was talking to her about how when I went to college in the '90s, it's when Nirvana was exploding, and here I am in music theory class learning all this complex music structure, and I'm like, I don't think Kurt Cobain knows anything about what he's playing. But does that make his music less valuable? It's connecting with people. People are loving it. So does it
But
matter that he knows that he's going to this chord over that chord and went to the flat 4, the major 7? He has no idea. I don't think he knows.
and based on how many copies Nevermind sold that year versus Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, I think it really doesn't matter.
And Carlton, I would agree that I follow multiple Instagram accounts that are all about AI, and every day it's like, here are the 5 tools that you need to hack your whole life with AI, and it's like every day it's 5 new tools. I'm like, I don't know which ones are actually valuable and worth investing time. I'm tired of learning platforms to only learn a different platform the next week. It's really a time waste. And so it really becomes this thing. And I feel like right now with AI, there's a lot of that where people are like, well, let me just see where this lands so I can not waste a bunch of time on all the early adoption stuff.
Well, and that's one of the things I wanted to mention is that in this past couple years of the AI craze, I feel like every company has felt this immense pressure to just slap AI on their homepage, whether they have it or not, whether what they have is really just fancy automation or maybe not even that fancy, rudimentary automation, but they can just say it's AI to capture whatever, make sure their stock prices don't plummet. Like
Yep.
that definitely happens. So then when you try out new tools with the expectation that a magic robot in the sky is going to do this amazing work for you, and then the results are kind of disappointing, it's like, all right. And I feel like sadly that happens a lot more than the experience of me being like, wow, I did this prompt or this input and what it gave me was perfect on the first go around. What an amazing job.
Yes, exactly. And if you're just joining us, this is the Music Career Study Group. Um, be bold like Carlton. Weigh in with a question. Let us know where you're watching from. We're talking AI and music today. And I thought there'd be a little bit of outrage on this. Maybe is it because it's the first week of September? Everyone's like, too much going on. I'm just gonna be someone who cruises and listens. I'm not gonna
Maybe,
weigh in.
maybe.
Um,
And so far, Carlton, as the only person who's weighed in, seems fairly even minded about this topic.
yeah, because when I talk to artists, there's some people that lose their mind over this.
Yeah.
Uh, and there are other artists that have really taken like what Carlton's saying, like there's a lot of stuff out there. What do we do with it? We need some training. Um, and there's other artists that have ignored it completely.
Yeah. Well, I know we can talk about some specific tools that we've used, but before we did that, I wanted to just give voice to one other big concern, which is um, it alludes, I suppose, to that lawsuit earlier, but whether or not AI companies, have the right to train their models on copyright protected content. So there's a big lawsuit happening where the 3 major labels got together and sued a couple AI music generation tools basically saying, hey, you can't take our stuff, this stuff we own, we spent money and investment and decades to promote, learn everything you can from it, and then use that knowledge basically against us by creating infinite amounts of competing content. And so that is a question, because I think certain people who are on the AI, I don't know if it's AI accelerationism or whatever, the camp that basically says, hey, this is just doing what humans do. Humans listen, we process, we recognize patterns, we try to imitate. And then later when we go and compose our own stuff, we're drawing upon everything we've ever heard and making choices. So what's the difference? Isn't that what AI is doing? I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know. But it's an interesting question, because if the future is just infinite custom AI versions of music trained on models, well, it will damage labels' ability to make money from their catalogs. The other interesting piece of this lawsuit, I think, is that if the labels win, the damages will be so vast that the AI companies will not have the money to properly pay the damages, and they'll probably just get taken over by these labels, in which case maybe the labels can then just use these tools to make their own fully licensed and legal AI versions of stuff trained on their content, because they own it now.
Yeah, it is interesting because it's like you can't you can't copyright a chord progression. Otherwise, there would be no music.
Mhm.
But
Or just a lot of really bad music.
yeah, a lot of really bad music. But then what I think the question would be, how, again, all this is happening sort of in secret. So at what point, what is the model being trained from? Is it being trained from the progression? Is it being trained from, hey, songs in this genre tend to have this instrumentation? Or is it being like, hey, every Taylor Swift song does this, and so we're going to copy it. So if you type in make a Taylor Swift song, which right now none of the services let you type an artist's name and create a song based on that artist's name. But we don't know, as the user, what depths they've trained their models, and as the label industry, they don't know either. So they've got these copyrights, these sound recordings that have performed over time. So they want to make sure that they protect it, which they have every right to. You know, if I found out that AI was spitting out uh, a bunch of duplicates of my band that was diluting the market and the fan base, I'd be like, hey, what the heck? Stop it. Stop it. But we don't know. That's the thing. That's part of the problem, is nobody, there's been no transparent process to it. We've had a bunch of people just join in. If you are watching, this is the Music Career Study Group. So far, Carlton's the only one that's been bold enough to weigh in on the comments. Feel free to weigh in. Let us know where you're watching from. Drop a link to your music. And we'd love to know where you're at in the world. And we're talking AI and music today, and we show up here every week, Thursdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, if you're watching, it'd be great if you click the like button, hit share, let other artists know that this is happening. This is our second week doing this, and we hope it to be a long running live stream where we just get together, chat, talk about the news, talk about issues, and learn from each other, talk about big things that artists need to know about as they pursue a career in music.
Yeah, one of the things I'm curious about for viewers that want to weigh in, or Kevin, maybe if you've used certain tools, is like when I've used visual tool, video editing stuff, or like, the ones where it's you feed it a video and it's supposed to chop it into social cuts for you and, put captions and stuff. There's Opus, Descript, StreamYard does it. There's a bunch of these tools. I have so far felt like not only are the results not like publishable as is, and so they need some massaging, some human engagement before they're ready for the public, but one step further, that if it takes that, my personal process would have been better and quicker to have just started from scratch and done it entirely myself. because kind of I know my own process. I don't know if that makes sense. Like
Absolutely.
like it's
Absolutely.
not saving me time. I'm actually spending more time wrestling with the tool instead of just doing the damn thing.
Yeah, I was working on using an AI tool for video editing, one of the things we were working on. And yeah, same experience. It's like you get to a point and it's like the video tool, depending on what kind of AI video tool you're using, it's like it puts a third arm on, it's like it's doing all this weird stuff. You're like, that's like halfway there, but I still can't use it like this, but I can't fix it either. So I just wasted an hour when I could have had the whole thing done by now if I just done it myself. That's been a lot of my experience, but I think we should highlight some ways that artists should be using AI, because I think there's several things happening in with your artist career. If you're thinking about your artist career, there's the AI tools that are shaping how music is created. And in that is a subset of that is just AI tools that will just make music for you. Those themselves are not as clean and easy as they get described. And you mentioned video, Chris. There was, I think this was like 4 or 5 months ago, there was this big announcement that this video platform would forever change Hollywood and put a lot of people out of work because it created this film looking thing. And I'm not even sure if it was a full length film or whatever. But when you go to the site, it's like, in order to get that option, you got to pay hundreds of dollars, or they did it once and everything else is going to look exactly like that. And it's like, okay, we're at the point where the marketing around these products are good, but the actual execution in real life is still not great and is pretty obvious that it's AI.
I remember having that feeling when OpenAI did its video creation tool advertising. I was like, oh, damn, those are great. And then I'm not sure I've heard much about it since, but
yeah, there was one that I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna make some because my band Small Town Poets has several Christmas albums, and we see a bump in our use of our music at Christmas. And I thought, oh, I'm gonna make a bunch of just reels, like use AI to crank out a bunch of reels, like Christmas music videos that are like just focus on the hook, get some visuals that look interesting. And I spent hours and I got one that was usable. And it kept spitting out very similar things over and over again. I'm like, no, I keep giving you completely different prompts and they keep coming back. I'm like, okay, I get it. These are all one trick ponies. It's good to get, like you said, that investment money. They're playing for the investment money, not for the user base. But the creation tools aside, there are a lot of AI tools that artists should be using to speed up their workflow. One of the biggest complaints from the artist community is that we have to spend so much time doing non-creative, non-music things that at the end of the day, that's what we wanted to get into music, to be creative and write songs, record music, go out and play and perform. But there's so much administrative work and things that aren't music related that have to be done, or that could be optimized and done better. And some of those things are, for example, writing a good bio.
Yep.
I've been using ChatGPT to drastically improve bios and things for both my band and other artists that I work with. And that's been a huge help. Another thing that I've used it for, working with some Canadian artists, and wherever you are in the world, there may be your local government. And this may be true in some US cities as well, but the ability to apply for grants, and some of these grant applications are just monstrous. And it's like, I don't want to waste so much time doing this. And it just feels like a big blocker to getting these things done. Chat GPT you just give it an outline of what you want it to do. Bam, your grant is written, and it's pretty fantastic. You might have to do a little bit of updating. Some of the language sometimes can be a little repetitive or sound a little bit corporate-y at times, but using it to fill content, like things on your website, social media posts. They're great at creating ideas for social media posts, and sort of using it as a brainstorm tool, I think is very useful and helpful for artists to get away from spending so much time doing that stuff and move back to the creative side of things.
Yeah, well, I said that when it comes to the video editing stuff, I generally feel like I'd be better off having just done it all myself. I do not feel like that when it comes to ChatGPT. Um, I still almost always feel like I need to breathe my own life into what's being presented, but that's
Yep.
fine. It's still saving me time. And like you said, like list building type stuff, if you're like, "Hey, give me 35 ideas for emails I can write to my audience," it helps to spend a bit of time teaching ChatGPT who your audience is, who you are, what your music is, and all that sort of stuff. And then like, hey, what's 35 emails I can send this year? And you might like half of them, but hey, it took you 30 seconds to get some great ideas for your email marketing. Same thing could go for like, hey, I have a picture of me doing this on stage. Come up with 20 options for an Instagram caption. And you might really like two of them, and then you just sort of put it in your own words. Because we all know that thing of like staring at our phone, being like, what should I say about this?
Oh,
And
I hate that.
it takes you
You don't
10
know how
minutes.
many times I sat there staring at a photo going, like, I just spent 20 minutes. This was dumb. This was a
Yeah.
waste of time.
If you don't think of something you're confident to go with the caption, you just close it down. You've now completely wasted 20 minutes because you
I'm
didn't even
not
post the
posting.
damn photo. So ChatGPT can be great for stuff like that as well.
Yes. Yeah. And one of the things that I found it extremely useful for is, most of us probably have a personal bio or a band bio or artist bio. And you go to websites and you're like, oh, I've got my bio. It's all dialed. It's 2 paragraphs. It's the perfect length. And you go there and it's like, put in your bio. It can be 200 characters. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's not enough. And you drop it and then you sit there staring at a page going, how do I whittle this down? I use that all the time. Like I drop it into Chat GPT and I say, hey, take my artist bio, my band bio, trim it down to 200 characters. Here's the bio. And again, I might have to do a little tweaking, but it just speeds up that time where I just spend wasting trying to engineer and wordsmith stuff when I don't need to, because at the end of the day, it's not going to matter that much.
Right. One thing I think is interesting, I've not personally used it for anything like audience nurturing, like when you've got your fan base and you want to communicate with them. I have played around with it more for content creation, but like 11 Labs has that um, voice, what do they call it? Voice recognition. You train it, you talk to it a lot, it learns your voice, and then you can just type something and it'll create you saying that thing. And there's a video equivalent of that as well once it learns your face. And so you could potentially record custom messages for your fans, whether they be audio messages, even video messages. I'm sure there's a lot of other things you could do when you kind of want to automate a humanized version of yourself to engage with your audience, but you're like, oh man, I have like 2,000 fans. I don't have the time to like sit down and whatever. Maybe you have 100,000 fans. It's not really scalable for you to do that in real time, but you could lean on AI tools to be more personalized.
Yeah, and you can get really advanced with it on your marketing. I think, over the years, Chris, you and I have always talked about how artists underutilize their email list. I'm guilty of it. Um, I'm sure everyone watching is guilty of it as well. And email, the nice thing about email is it's one of those things where people uh, tend to pay more attention, but it is absolutely out of all your marketing levers that you can pull, the place where people will buy more often when you send them marketing. So I know a lot of artists will like focus on, hey, we got a new T-shirt drop, and they'll put it on social, and they might get a bunch of likes and excitement, but be surprised at, man, nobody bought.
Mhm.
Email is where you get conversions, and you can use AI tools to create even just like an email uh, funnel. But what is like, what, I don't want to say email chain, but like, what is it, Chris? Like multiple emails. What's the
Oh,
word
and
for
a
it?
sequence.
Sequence. Yeah, like where that can be automated through your email provider. And so someone does something and they get an email, and you sort of bring them on a journey that you've already pre-programmed, that whenever somebody buys something or they sign up on your email list, they get this pre-programmed uh, uh, chain of emails. AI tools can help you simplify that creation process. Because for me, that's always been like, oh, I know I need to do this, but 5 emails. That's going to be like 5 days of work, and then
Mhm.
I'll never finish it. But with the AI tools, I think it's something you can go to ChatGPT, say create an email chain of 4 emails with this many character or this amount of text in each about these things, and you can just kind of give it the bullet points because I find that's easy from the creative process when you're trying to make marketing to reach out to your fans, that it's easy to come up with the bullet points. I want to do this. I want to do that. Um, but then it's like the actual wording, it can get kind of bogged down. And it's some people watching may be amazing writers and they can just crank things out. But anyway, uh, so uh, you can use it to just do that and it'll create those emails. You can tweak them a little bit and you're ready to go.
Yeah, one other thing that I really think AI can be useful for is in the creation process. I generally think that progress is way better than perfection in the moment. Like you
Hmm.
don't want to get bogged down, you don't want to get stuck, you don't want to stop working. Um, so even if you lean on AI in more of a in the moment kind of chat way, like I think sometimes people think, oh, Chat GPT, I should feed it this big long list of what I need. But no, sometimes you can just be like, what's up? Cool. Hey, what rhymes with this? It gives you, no, I don't like that. What about this? Could you, what if this was a song lyric? What's the next couplet? What would you run? And you can kind of have a real time conversation. And again, a lot of what it says might not be useful for you, but simply getting something that you can plug into the song in that moment will keep you moving. And then later, maybe you think of your own lyric that works better. To talk about BandLab again, there's a song starter feature. So there's tools that basically just get you going. And like, because again, progress is better than perfection when you're just trying to make stuff.
Yeah, I think it fights the blank page um, issue that a lot of artists have. They're looking at a blank page, they're looking at a blank um, session in their DAW, they're looking at a blank document of, I got to write this thing. It can help just generate ideas quickly. That's what I love using it for a lot of times for marketing purposes, both for my band and what we do at work here, that it can just generate a lot of ideas. And I think what we found sometimes, you and I, Chris, is that it'll look at things from a different perspective than I might, or it might throw out an angle, like it might give me a list, but one of the items, like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. I thought, I kind of knew these. I would have come up with these other ones. It spit them out faster. But that one thing, yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't really think about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I had a few things I wanted to mention because as we sort of wrap things up about what the future of all this might mean, but do you have any other specific tools you've used or
I've
things you want to
tried.
mention?
I've tried Udio. I've tried, what's the other one? It starts with
You
a
know?
Suno. And again, those tools can be fun to kind of generate ideas. They're pretty good. But what I'm hearing isn't like, oh, this is a final product. But I think they can be fun to play around with. I think they can be good song starter tools, not the song starter that's in BandLab, which is great. I have a artist brand that I have that I'm starting to build called Red Machine. The main song I have there was something that I just used the song starter tool, and I was trying to improve my skills in a genre that I wouldn't normally write in, and it created this basis for it. And then uh, I was like, I want to write this song in an hour, and boom, there it was. It took me about a day and a couple other follow up sessions to fully flesh out all the instrumentation and pieces, but it came fast. I was like, wow, that was so much fun. I felt very creative. I did not feel like the tool did the heavy lifting for me. I felt like it just got me started, and I had a blast doing it. And at the end of the day, if music isn't fun, then go be a
Well,
banker or something. uh, but
well,
but I think some of these tools can be used that way, and it can be helpful and fun.
yeah, what one area I've found a lot of usefulness for these tools is in graphic design. So,
Yeah.
there's Dolly and Midjourney, which will just generate images based on a prompt. But even within Photoshop and Canva, there's kind of, smart design tools where it's essentially making really good guesses at what you envision. Like you can take a small image and say, now, if you expanded it, what would exist beyond the borders of what you see? And a lot of times it does something cool. Sometimes there will be sort of strange artifacts and like it'll look a little mangled. And even that can be a cool aesthetic for something like an album cover or a concert poster. Within Canva, there's a bunch of things like background remover and Magic Editor, all that sort of stuff. And for my most recent EP, I actually used Midjourney for the cover. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah, you have no idea how much time I wasted in years gone by trying to delete that one random thing in the background and make it look like it's all, you know, seamless and there was no random person that ruined the shot or that weird angle. And it's like now Photoshop will do that for you in seconds, and Canva has some of those tools as well. And so I think those are a lot of the things that do help us as artists maximize our time and move towards the creation process. Or again, even on the visual side of things, like you mentioned, helping us actualize ideas that we have in our brain that in the past we wouldn't have had the resources or money to be able to accomplish. And so I think that's pretty cool.
Are you deep down really mad at the people who just get to use these tools now since you had to learn how to do it by hand?
No, I don't think so. Because look, at the end of the day, and I think this is one of those things with AI and music. I think at the end of the day, why I don't freak out about it is you still have to have good musical taste. And I'm not sure AI has good musical taste. It still takes a human to understand what a human wants. And you could say, well, all the AI is trained on humans and it's going to get better and better. And I've talked to some people that said it'll get better and better. I've talked to an AI person who told me that AI always has to be getting new information. So if you fed it all the artist music that ever existed in the world up until 2024, and then you stopped, it's going to start to be inbred after that. And the world moved on, but AI still thinks it's 2024. I mean, in the Matrix,
Matrix, what is it, 97?
97, because they said that was the peak of humanity. And I have to agree.
OK Computer came out that year, I think.
Our debut album came out that year, and it was a very good year.
Good times.
As seen by On the Wall. But anyway, I think some of those things come into play as well, that humans still are finicky individuals. Like we'll hate something and then we'll like it. For example, randomly, like 2 years ago, my daughter and I put on 21 Pilots, and I forget why. I think one of her friends was into it, and we just weren't into it. Back in the day when you and I worked at CD Baby, their first few albums were distributed through CD Baby, and then when they became huge, we had to pull it down. And I kind of went, not for me. Then we were on a road trip where some of their songs were heavily in the playlist we were listening to for hours. And I'm like, yeah, this is good. Went to the show 2 weeks ago, blew my mind. And now we were like, me and my daughter's like the biggest 21 Pilots fans. So it's kind of one of those things. I think I had the same experience with Radiohead. Like when OK Computer was first out, I was like, yeah, it's good, but I didn't have the same like attachment to it and love for it that I do now. So I think sometimes, humans are finicky. And I think that's one of the things that computers will always be like, we thought we had these humans figured out. We can't figure them out. They're just crazy.
They're just really shallow.
They're shallow. They don't know what they want. They're all over the place. We downloaded their brain and it made no sense. Now we're trying to do stuff to make them happy and we can't do it. We're giving up. The computer explodes. That's how it all ends.
Well, one thing I was going to say about the future plays on the possibility that you mentioned of it actually getting better and better and better at creating music that we love. And if it does, if that's the reality of the future, where, nearly infinite new music can be made that is really good, or at least fits our personal need in that moment, what will that mean for humans? And I don't think it means humans are out of a job and everything's, going to be depressing for creative artists. I think what it means is that just like we always do, independent musicians particularly and label musicians will have to figure out how to monetize their own humanity.
Mhm.
And something about the connection that we can share with our audience as humans will mean something and will be worth something if we can figure out the right way to do it. And this, I guess what I'm saying is that's the same problem we have now and that we had 20 years ago and 100 years ago, is essentially how to connect with an audience. And I don't think um, the volume of music that's available makes that necessarily all that different a challenge, because there's already millions and millions of musicians sort of competing for attention. So
Yeah. I think the areas of the industry where AI is going to be problematic or a threat is with production music, which if you're not familiar with what production music is, it's a lot of I'll call it throwaway music that you hear in TV shows. If you heard it, like you had the track soloed and it wasn't in the background of a TV show, you'd be like, this sounds kind of cheaply made. It sounds kind of inauthentic. I've always thought that about production music. It doesn't sound as good, can have kind of a cheesy vibe to it. Whether it's pop, rock, classical, like it's or orchestration, it's that kind of music that I think is threatened. And there's a whole industry that have it's production music. They might call it library music, that they have all these tracks that a TV show or a film might say, we just need a track to create this vibe in the background. Nobody will know who it is. It's not the score. It's not the major artist feature. It's just something to help create the vibe of the scene. I think that music can those catalog owners can be threatened by AI, because that stuff, you're not hiring big time composers to create. It's usually people that can just crank out some stuff really fast that's adequate.
yeah,
And that's not anything offensive to people that do that. That's all it's required. You're not going to spend tons of money creating this big artistic piece and then the only occasionally get it placed for $500, because those kind of placements are very, very cheap. They're not. It's more of a volume play.
yeah. Well, and also you don't want to put all this brilliance into this original piece of work that then just sits as the bed under some insignificant scene in a Hallmark romance. Like, you'd rather save those great ideas for something, original that you're trying to build an audience around. Unless you're just such a genius that everything you do is amazing. But
We've had some tracks in that and in some soap operas, and they don't pay. And you see it and you're like, it sounded kind of cool when they told us they were using it. And then when I see it, I'm like, you can't hear it enough to tell who it is. And,
Mhm.
but, no, being in the band, I could tell it's us, but I'm like, it felt kind of cheap.
Uh-huh.
feel kind of dirty and used. I might need to go take a shower.
But
All
here's the
right.
question about that: would you license it to them again? In this, knowing what
Well,
you
it,
know?
it didn't pay. If it was an original track, I'd be curious, but it was Christmas music that we got in both those, and they're public domain songs, and so they don't pay for the master recording. Like, oh, you'll get it on the back end. I'm like, no, we won't. There's no royalty for master recordings performance like off of TV in the US. So it
Yeah.
made nothing.
But
So
you can call your aunt and say, "Hey, turn on Hallmark. I'm a real musician now."
those Hallmark shows that you're addicted to, guess who's making the music?
One other thing I was going to say about AI, as we're sort of guessing what the future holds, is there's always that chance that the pendulum swings back. Trends go between extremes. And in the same way that I notice some kids are sort of putting aside their cell phones and trying to avoid the internet, and it's kind of like the 21st century of like the back 21st century version of the back to the land movement, simplifying
Yeah.
your life. I can also imagine a future where just the sheer volume of available music makes people be like, nah, I don't need choice. What I really need is just a few favorite albums, a few favorite artists. I'm going to just curate this little experience of music that feels not homegrown, because it will all be online in some way. But do you know what I mean? Like a simpler kind of slow food movement version of music. And that's what the pendulum will swing towards after we've gotten so sick of the fact that there's trillions of songs being made per second.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's I've been watching the AI thing develop, curious where it will go, but I'm not in freak out mode where I think to start the year, there was like people just in panic mode. The house was
Mhm.
burning down. And I think now that the dust is settled, most people have realized that companies have been using the term AI when it's not really AI. It's just they created some automated decision tree or something, or just some automation. And it's like, that's not really AI. AI is it's like it can think like a human, make decisions, uh, and create creative concepts from a few ideas or direction, not just like, oh, I turned your video sepia tone regular color. I mean, that's not AI. Um, yeah, as we wrap things up, I just want to say thank you for joining us, but also this has been the Music Career Study Group. If you jumped in midway and didn't know what we were doing or talking about, today we were talking about AI and music. So if you missed it, it will be live or it will be available on the Reverb Nation YouTube page and the Facebook page. And join us next Thursday. I think we're going to have a good topic that lots of people are going to have questions about. I haven't told you what we should talk about, but I will after this.
Yeah, now I need
unless
to
you
know.
want me to, unless you want me to surprise you right now.
Well, you could, and then if people watching have questions on it, maybe they could leave them in the.
I'll tell you later because maybe you
All
go,
right.
that sucks. We shouldn't talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, one thing
I,
to wrap up with, if you have not used Promote It, which is a great advertising tool within Reverb Nation, you should check it out now because you can get $10 off your ad campaign. Use Promote It 10 as the coupon code, and you can get your music on all kinds of major music sites like Pitchfork, Rolling Stone, NME, many more. And if you use the what is it called, feature a song goal, you can choose a bunch of different goals. There's one where you have it feature a song, and that will allow the person on these sites to play the track right there without even having to click anywhere else. They don't have to go to a streaming platform. They can hear it instantly, which makes them much more likely to actually do that thing and hear your music.
yeah, and I've said, I know we've had a lot of new people jump in. I've said this before. I have tried pretty much every platform that I can find that helps artists advertise their music, and this one by far gets great results compared to others. And especially that one Chris just mentioned where people can just play right there. They're on a music site. They're looking, they're on Pitchfork looking at articles about new music. They see your ad right there with a play button. They're gorgeous looking ads. They click play. The engagement on these is far superior to any other thing I've seen with this type of advertising. And so highly recommend it. And it's $10 free. $10 free. And the minimum campaign is $21. So basically for $11, you can get a great campaign. And Chris, you've got an article on the Reverb Nation blog where you got 1,800 plays.
Yeah, and actually, that was just at the time I wrote the article. By the end of the first week the ad had running, it was something like 2,300 or something like that. People had played it for less than $50 on my budget. So very affordable. If people don't know much about advertising, they might hear like, I don't know what to think of that. Well, that is a lot of engagement for that amount of money. So
yeah,
I was really pleasantly surprised. Happy to. I left the campaign running for another 2 weeks, so was happy to keep getting new listeners on these sites.
Yes.
Well,
all right. Well, that's going to bring us to the end of another Music Career Study Group. Next week, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us. It's going to be a great topic that we get tons of questions about. Join us, and yeah, don't be shy next time. So many people have been shy this week. We've had a lot of people jumping in and out, which is the study group. You show up for a bit, then you can move on, but not a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
It's the first week for a lot of people going back to school in a bigger routine. Summer's kind of winding down. I know we're all sad.
Yeah.
Summer's over.
Well, if you have questions, this is the place to ask them next week.
Yep. And check out the Reverb Nation blog.reverbnation.com. There's lots of great topics there and information about moving your music career forward. Chris and I are here to help you learn the the things you need to know to build a career with your music, grow your business, grow your audience. And we're here for artists that are trying to be intentional and break above all the noise and build real connections with fans and make some money. Let's make some money doing this music.
That too.
All right.
Well, I'm excited to hear what this topic is for next week.
It's a surprise.
Kevin will tell me in a minute, and we'll tell you next week.
All right. Take it easy.
See y'all.
See ya.